My name is Melody Riccio. I go to First Real Baptist Church, now called Cross Church of Bakersfield. I have been going there for the last, I want to say, 22 years, and I've raised all of my children there. My life before Christ, if anybody knows me, they know my personality is already out there. I'm loud. I don't know, I'm just a big ball of energy most of the times. Now imagine all of that energy directed at bad things. That was me. I was raised on the east side and grew up in some of the what you would consider the bad neighborhoods. Hung out with what I believe to be the best friends possible. Grew up close-knitted with my neighbors. But going to school and being raised in those neighborhoods, you definitely picked up a lot of bad traits. Sometimes you're encouraged to, just fit in. And so many things happened in my life that caused me to stumble into a whole world of darkness. And it wasn't this world that was out there, it was just inside. I was lost, completely lost. At night when I would get scared and I would be, at that point in time, intoxicated at a young age of 15 years old, 14 years old, I would be scared. And I felt something tugging at me because of that fear of not understanding, all of the emotions and the whatever was happening to my body being intoxicated. And I remember telling my friend, oh my goodness, we need to pray. I had no idea where that came from. I had no idea if I watched it on a movie. I don't know. And I literally would say, okay, let's pray. And I sat there, and I can remember this clearly, and I said, who do we pray to? I had no idea. I literally that night prayed to Buddha, Mary, Jesus, God, Mohammed, and anybody else that was going to make my heart stop speeding up the way that it was and just let me go to sleep in peace. And that was tough, living and not knowing anything about God. In one of the neighborhoods that I grew up in, we did have the bus ministry came by. In my head now, I kind of put a face to it, and I feel like it was Dennis Crook. I have no idea if that's true. I really don't. But in my mind, I just remember some guy showing up, on Saturdays and asking if we were going to go to church. And I can remember saying and getting excited and getting candies and knowing that we were going to get donuts and milk on that bus. And so I do remember a few times going to church, and I remember it being very strict, and I remember you had to be good, you had to be quiet, but it was all worth it. Those donuts and milk in the morning made it completely worth it. And I know I had to have gained something out of it because there was still something in me that I can't track back any further than that. Growing up in the high school years, certain events in my life had, like I said, triggered a deep, dark depression. I didn't want to leave the house. I became extremely pale because I'd never seen the light of day. Spiraling into that depression, I definitely sought out all of the wrong things. By this time, I was with Jose, my husband now of 25 years, and we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And I started doing all of those bad things that teenagers do, the drinking and smoking things. And I just remember my husband, my boyfriend at the time, telling me to stop, that you have to stop. We really didn't have any reason. We didn't have God as being the number one reason. It was just, you have to stop because this isn't okay. So at that point in time, I was already dark, depressed, suicidal, and I was fed up with myself. I was done being this way. And I knew there had to be something different. There had to be. And I was willing to give it one more try, one more chance. Like, okay, if things can be different, then let's start now. I, at that time, was going to a special school for depressed children. And there was a bus driver. And the bus driver always noticed that I would miss Mondays or miss Fridays. And she's like, why don't you come on these days? And I told her, well, my brother, he does a lot of things on the weekends, and a lot of people in and out of my room, a lot of people in and out of my home. And so not really a lot of sleep happening. And so she continued to speak with me, continued to see that she saw something. She was able to put it together with what I needed. I didn't know. I had no clue that God was somewhere out there for me. So she put it together, and she approached me one day and she said, what do you think about moving out? And I'm like, I'm 15 years old. I don't think about moving out. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be dead by the time I'm 18. And that's because I had no future goals at all. And she says, well, what if I tell you I have a place? It's a foster home, and if I can make arrangements, would you want to move there? And I said yes. And that was the beginning of truly seeing a different way of life. So as I made that choice to move in with this foster family, I knew nothing about them. It was a huge step. And I went to live with them with the attitude of I just wanted to be normal. I had no idea what normal was, but I wanted to be normal. And so I went with them, and it was amazing. They were nothing special. They weren't showering me with gifts. They didn't do anything different than what God was asking of them. I never understood it at the time that I lived there. I didn't understand that that was a home of God. That was where God presided in their hearts. God was with them every day. I really, truly didn't recognize that until years later when someone actually spoke to me about the gospel completely. But at that point in time, I saw how they lived. The mom cared for her children. She didn't yell at her children. There were chores, tons of chores. I had not had to do chores all my life. And I got grounded, which was very exciting. I called Jose and I was like, oh my gosh, I just got grounded. And he's like, okay, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. Hold on, let me ask. And she was very kind and compassionate. She said, okay, well, this is what grounding means. And she grounded me, and it was beautiful because it showed me that somebody cared. Somebody wanted me to be better than I was. Somebody wanted me to stop making the bad choices, and they wanted me to do right. That was huge. That was something I was not receiving before. I was just being permission to do whatever, whenever I wanted to, because my mom thought I was adult enough. And so I watched them every single day, and they would go to church on Sundays, and I would go with them reluctantly. I had this false notion of God turned his back on me. Why would I ever go towards him? Why would I want him to help me when he didn't help me during this situation? He let this happen to me, let this happen to my family. I had that typical teenage attitude, and I still went. I don't remember much about the services. I do just remember this family living that life. And later on, my uncle, as me and Jose were dating, and I moved out, got our first apartment together, my uncle would tell us about God and about church. And at first it was a lot of nagging. And at first it was just a lot of, you should get married. But he finally convinced Jose to go to church, and we did, and we went. And it wasn't until one night, the bus, again, took us all to a play. It was a huge production. It was called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. And it was a big church on California Avenue. And we went there, and it spoke to us at our level. You know, we were still really young, very immature. And it was a play about families making decisions, people making decisions that once they died, you saw that they were at Heaven's Gates. And if you were not right with God, did not have him in your heart, you were going to be cast in hell. And it was eye-opening. And that night, Jose first walked up there and was saved, and I followed him. And that was our moment of salvation. Once we got saved, we expected things to be different. Of course, we weren't married. We were living together. So that was a problem. That was a problem with Pastor Hames. It was a problem with my uncle. And of course, it was a problem with me, but gave me great incentive to convince Jose to marry me. And so we started seeing little blessings here and there, and we did decide to get married. So it changed us in a way, but we were still listening to other people. We were not digging into the gospel ourselves. We had not picked up the Bible to really read it. Of course, we had that attitude of, I don't understand it anyway. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so we were just constantly like little babies needing to be fed. And so we did get married, but prior to getting married, we were trying to have a baby already. We were 18 years old, barely 18 years old. And it wasn't working out. And so in our lives, we were very devastated. And we were going through these tribulations. And I somewhat had God, but I guess I didn't truly feel it, especially going through those trials. You know, I didn't have a child yet. But after losing 3, we finally had set our date and we were going to be married. We got married and it was amazing. I know that it probably didn't just all of a sudden switch and God has blessed us, but it almost felt like that's what happened. We got married. We started living and obeying God a lot more than we had been. And 4 months after we were married, we got pregnant with my son, Isaac. And I told Jose, I just know that this baby's fine. I just know that this pregnancy's fine. There's something about this that's different. And it was. And the blessings kept coming. It was so overwhelming, the blessings and how they rolled in. It was unreal. You know, everybody said, oh, it doesn't make it. Just because you're saved doesn't mean you're going to be happy. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But it was so much better than the darkness we had experienced before. It was so much better than the loss and you were never alone. And so in all these joys, we had someone to give the glory to. There was nothing that we did that was different other than obey him. And it's true, those blessings just fell into our laps. And of course, we had our son Isaac, and then we had our daughter Isis. And then in between, we lost a few babies and pregnancies, quite a few. But we were so blessed with what God had given us that it just made everything else bearable. And so, you know, just obeying him and finally feeling it. And as I was raising my kids, learning really where my vision and where my understanding of a Christian home came from, which is that foster home. I realized that's what I want. That's how I want my house. I don't want my house like I had my house growing up. I want to live as they lived. I want to live with love. I want to live with compassion. I want to live with caring. I want to live with the Bible open on the table. I want to experience all of those things. And that's where I realized how much that family really did for me in my life. And I'm not kidding. I probably only lived there for no more than 4 to 6 months. But it was a life changer. It wasn't until maybe 3 years later, I would say maybe even more, 3 to 4 years later, that we finally read the Bible for the first time. Read it all the way through. That was a huge game changer again, because even if we didn't understand something, it just felt as if when other people were discussing a problem or an issue, that verse came up, and I was able to say, that's what he's talking about. And making those little discoveries all throughout life has been a huge blessing. So to my 15-year-old self that was scared, intoxicated, and lost, I would tell her, stay the course. It will be okay. I promise you. Trust in God. Everything that happens for a reason. I would not take back any of the tragedies we have gone through, and we have gone through many tragedies. I would not take back any of them because all of them have made us who we are today. And I kind of like who we are today. I would tell her, do not fear. Fear is of the devil, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to completely terrorize you into inaction, whereas God will free you from all of those things if you allow him. And so I would just tell that girl that it will get better. It will get better.